Bengals have the ball. They are running it back. Sam Hubbard.
Jennings is going to go all the way. When it comes down, the Bengals are champions.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up. It is good.
Today, Bengal fans, here we gather, talking football back for year 5. We're covering all things Houday Nation. We're glad you joined us here tonight. Special guests, past and present players. You never know who you might see. One thing that's for sure, it's all things Bengals. And it all goes back to charity. We at Talking Football want to thank you for joining us for the show tonight. By the fans, for the fans, until the very end. It's Talking Football with Bengal Jim and friends. It's Talking Football with Bengal Jim and friends.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a Bengal Jimless version of Bengal Jim and Friends. James and I will get you through our next broadcast hour, getting everybody updated, fired up, ready for the whiteout and a victory against the Eagles. But James, it's just you and I. You think we can handle it? A lot of people are very nervous tonight.
Yeah, I think we got it. It's always easier to do the show on a Tuesday after a win and Joe Burrow's first win in Cleveland. So we'll start off talking about that. A couple of people asked, "Are you going?" No, I'm 0-4. One of these days, I'm going to see a win in Cleveland, but that is yet to happen. So of course, I don't go, and they win on. I don't know. I don't want to use the word dominating performance at all, but they did what they needed to do in the AFC North game and win for the first time in Joe Burrow's career up there on the Mistake on the Lake.
Well, it's something to build on. I mean, right now with the hole that we are in, we can't really clamor for style points. We just need the wins, and we've got a team that I think some people got upset when I said this, but I think has a legitimate shot to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. Certainly I think Detroit looks like the strongest team right now, but I think Philadelphia and the way they're trending and the way they're playing and the quarterback they have, it's not going to be easy Sunday. But again, I think if the Bengals play their best game, we should be good.
Before we transition into the Sunday's whiteout game, let's recap a little bit more about Cleveland. And I think, look at the initial kickoff, look at Charlie Jones, who was a high draft pick. Obviously, he had the touchdown return last year on a punt return, not a kickoff, I believe. Probably the biggest play we've seen on a kickoff, considering the new rules this year. Certainly set the tone, was big to see him do that. I think he's been better on special teams than we've seen him actually play wide receiver, but what a great start to kind of silence that crowd up there in Cleveland.
It did set the tone, and heck, it was the entire Bengals scoring offense for the first half when they went in up 7-6, and things got a little bit more settled. And there were things you didn't like to see, but a lot of things we did like to see. And I tell you, the one guy that really stood out to me was Amaris Mims, and how he played at right tackle, and how I could not believe he just, no matter who they threw at him out there, even Myles Garrett, he just kept shutting him down. I was shocked they kept Myles Garrett on that side, even when Cody Ford moved in left tackle. They kept, I guess the plan was just to keep him on the right side up against a rookie, but we may have something very, very special at right tackle.
Yeah, anytime you don't hear the name Myles Garrett, and I can't remember hearing it much on the broadcast Sunday, kudos to Amarius Mims. But the other person you mentioned, Cody Ford, we saw him jump in the Baltimore game when Amarius went out for a little bit at right tackle. Saw him thrust into action on Sunday in Cleveland at left tackle. And to my knowledge, I don't think ever played that spot in the NFL. Kudos to him for coming in and plugging up that left side of the line. And once again, while not perfect, I think you've got to give a solid grade to that offensive line for the protection of Joe Burrow this year.
This is the best protection Joe's had as a pro. And probably the most reliable we've had in a running game. And it's still not perfect, still not near where we want it to be and where it can be, but it's getting better. And those 5 guys up front, you got to give them all the credit. And we'll find out a little bit more tomorrow about Orlando Brown Jr., how much he's banged up. Hopefully he can make it back Sunday and be 100%. They weren't too optimistic about that. I think they were a little more optimistic about Geno Stone playing, but that's where we are and move forward. But certainly a relief to get that win and get the monkey off our back for not being able to win in Cleveland for so long.
I mentioned the Geno Stone. Certainly, what we saw him on the field putting that air cast on, you thought, man, that was end of the year. I'm going to be done the rest of the year injury. So I was totally shocked when I heard the news that, heck, he's going to be back, maybe this week. So that's great news on that front. Friendly fire there with the injury to happening when he made contact with Von Bell. But, I think that is the one area where we certainly have some depth. I think we're all waiting to see more Jordan Battle back there in the secondary. But, all in all, a tough week in the NFL for injuries across the board. Obviously, you saw Deshaun Watson go down with the Achilles. I see the note in the chat talking about the Cleveland fans. We'll circle back to that. Who do you see? Brandon Ayuk went down last night's Monday night game. Mike Evans with a hamstring injury. Their other wide receiver, Godwin, injured. And I think there's a couple other prominent ones that banged up this week. So tough week in the NFL for injuries.
Yeah. 2 questions for you real quick, James. One of which is Chase Brown, running back 1. I mean, it doesn't matter who runs out the tunnel first.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% would say that. He loved the flash, that burst of speed. We saw that one long run called back because of the holding call. But, man, he just has that pop, that burst of speed that, no offense to Joe Mixon, but we didn't see that from him. And Joe's doing great in Texas on the short yardage carries and making it into the end zone. But glad to see Chase get released. And then when he needs a break, very capable back, and Zach Moss there right behind him. So, running game has been solid all year. I think that goes hand in hand with what the offensive line's doing. But, you got to love what you're seeing for Chase Brown. In my book, 100% RB1. You in agreement with that?
I am. And in terms of his long run, that should have counted. That was, a beautiful block that the expert eyes of Ron Torbert, for those that are baseball fans, the Angel Fernandez of the NFL, and who continues to shred the credibility of the commissioner and everybody, in New York in those offices, as long as he's a lead official and really as long as he's in the NFL without any sign of improvement. Every time I watch him, even if it's not a Bengals game, he makes an absolute fool of himself in the game. And Sunday was no different, despite the Bengals winning. So, I don't know who he's got pictures on, but they must be pretty good. The other question is, at safety, let's say Geno can't go Sunday. Now, I'm sure, Von Bell will be the other starter. Jordan Battle, who we've all been clamoring for, is a little bit like Geno in the sense of he's a good tackler. He's a great hustle guy. He's got great instincts, but he's a little more in the box type of safety. Do you start him, or are you looking at Tyson Anderson? Who are you looking at to start at the other safety spot?
I think, based on Jordan's experience last year, that would be the first person to that's going to get the nod in my book. Obviously, 2 years in the Lou Anarumo system. We got Tyson Anderson back there who's battled injuries. We saw Dejon Anthony get some play early in the season. Certainly those two right behind him. But I think just knowing the system, having that in-game experience, you would have to think all day that Jordan Battle is the next man up.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Hopefully Geno's okay. He's been looking better, looking a little more comfortable in the system, and hit that big interception on Sunday.
Big interception. But you know what? I was thinking about this after the game of how quickly the NFL can turn. You know, they're celebrating his first interception as a Bengal, you know, running down, celebrating with his team. And what was it? Not 10 minutes later, he's, you know, getting carted off on the golf cart from what looked like a lot worse injury than what it appears to be.
Well,
so,
you know what it's like to get whacked in the shin at some point in your life. To have, you know, a football player with his helmet and his pad go flying into your shin, you know, I'm sure I would have thought it was broken too, and I would have screamed, "Don't touch it!" And that, which is why I guess they put it in an air cast. He told him, "Don't touch it." Yeah. So, you know, hopefully he's back. He's trending better, and we're going to need the athleticism against Philadelphia to be absolute certain.
Staying on the defensive side, and I would have lost this trivia question. We saw the interception by Sam Hubbard on Sunday. I didn't realize that was his first interception in a Bengals uniform. Am I correct in that?
That it was his first, and he didn't get any style points from B.J. Hill, who was a little critical of how he came down with that. But nonetheless, no, great awareness from Sam, who's fought injury all of last year and fought injury all of this year, but has been playing tough and playing much better against the run of recent weeks. And for that, you know, somebody, and including myself, I would probably get on myself for this. To date, this team's MVP, Trey Hendrickson.
No argument on that. What was it? This was the stat that I believe I heard today. Sunday was his 10th game with multiple sacks, only behind a gentleman with 2. Did you hear this? That had 12. Can you guess who the Bengals defensive end who's had 12 multi-sack games is? Let's see if you put it in the chat. Before you say that, we're gonna give everybody in the chat an opportunity to put some names in there. But that was Trey's 10th. And he's behind somebody that has had 12. So if you know the answer to that, put that in the chat. And our resident Canadian will do a Bengal bomb with you on Sunday at the tailgate when he probably rolls in about 11 a.m. Hungover. But agree 100% with you on what Trey's brought to the defensive line, getting the pressure. You know, unfortunately, we haven't found that bookend on the left side. You know, Miles Murphy's trying to come back, trying to nurse his health, but still looking for that complementary left end to go with Trey. So you got any guesses on who that is, Tom?
I'm going to say Coy Bacon.
No way. Much sooner. Wrong decade.
Much more recent than Coy Bacon.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Well, sacks weren't also technically a stat back then. Much sooner.
Yes.
Carlos Dunlap.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other thing, and I believe I'm not mistaken here, somebody else that had 10 multi-sacks games on the interior of the defensive line played at the same time as Carlos Dunlap. That'll be an easy one for you.
For me or the fans?
For you.
Gino.
Yeah. So, and I didn't realize he had that much from the interior. So that was some good. Oh, John knew it in Toronto.
Yep.
But
you know, he was all NFL decade for a reason. And speaking of all decade and guys that belong in the Hall of Fame, some good news today. Anticipated, but we have learned not to always count on the wisdom of the voters for Canton. But Ken Anderson goes to the round of 31 finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame for the seniors category. This year it's a little different. It isn't just 3 players. It's players mixed in with contributors to the game and coaches. Makes it a lot harder for Ken. But we still believe this should be his year, and it will be his year. But he's made this next round. Now, sometime in November, they will reduce it from 31 to 9, And then I believe Super Bowl weekend, we will get the announcement of who the final who the guys are going in. But yeah, they'll go from 31 to 9, and then we'll see who's going in this time.
You and I kind of looked over that list before we went live on the air, but as you mentioned, the kind of that little wrench that's being thrown into it, it's not just the players that we've seen from the years past that, those 3 or 2 ended up going in, and last year it is a wider pool, which makes it more difficult and more odds stacked against Kenny. But at the end of the day, I think he's long overdue. And hopefully this is the year for him to get in. So it's progressing in the right direction. As you said, now we just need to cut it down to 22 more, make that final 9, and then that final 3. So that was good news, but not much of a surprise, as you mentioned in that regard. Anything else from Cleveland that I'm missing? The one thing, and I don't know if it was you and I talking, it might have been earlier about the missed field goal. Obviously, Cleveland had a missed field goal. Cleveland had a missed extra point, but Evan missed another field goal. We were talking about the hold. I didn't get a chance to see a clear view of it on TV. I don't know if anybody in the comments wants to talk about what they saw, but hate to see that. Hopefully he'll be back on track this week. Evan's obviously a dire part of the team, and especially when you look at all 3 phases, offensive, defensive, and special teams. We know what a big percentage special teams played into that win on Sunday. So hopefully it was just a little hiccup and nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah, it was. He was so automatic, but he has missed some. So we'll be keeping an eye on there. And with the new holder, it could have been timing, but leads me to think maybe it had something to do with the turf up there when you had an extra point and 2 field goals missed in the same game. Yeah. So
looking at it, that grass, man, they had that cut thin on Sunday. Almost looked like turf, how thin that was up there on Sunday. Whether it's there or Old Municipal Stadium, the turf at Cleveland has always been awful. I mean, I can remember as a kid in the 70s, used to paint the dirt green for the turf. Had just been tore up, and they'd go out and be spraying the dirt green. I think one time for an AFC championship game against Denver, they were doing that. But not the most attractive, and I guess that will not be their home much longer. There's going to be some fighting over it, but they're headed to the burbs. Yeah, I saw that. Was it Jacksonville that got approved for their new stadium within the last 7, 10, 14 days, whatever it was? And obviously we know what's going on with us in the county and the city and all that stuff here. So it's going to be interesting times, but we keep seeing every other team across the league get their new stadiums pushed through, and just shake our head and question what will happen for us. Yeah, every other market seems to be able to get it done. Except this one. And, maybe there are some selfish forces at work behind the scenes trying to prevent it. Certainly hope not. But, we'll see. I continue to be optimistic, but at the same point, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a horrific struggle before we get that. I agree. A lot of fighting going to be, and obviously you were a big part of it last time when Paycor was built, but fight the good fight, and hopefully it'll all work out for us in the end. And that stadium down there is going to be for Cincinnati. Yes, the Bengals will be the main tenants of it, but I think it'll be a multi-use facility for the city. So without further ado, our guest is here, ready to rock and roll. Tom, if you want to go ahead and
he has checked in. Well, he's joined us before. He is well respected by none other than one. If you're talking about Bengal media Mount Rushmore, he is respected and liked by Jeff Hobson. He covers the Bengals for A to Z Sports and a number of other outlets. But we welcome back John Sherran. John, welcome back to Bengal Jim and Friends. There he is.
Hey guys, how are we doing?
Doing good. It looks like you got the Halloween costume up behind your left shoulder.
Yeah, just Randall chilling with Good Berry's signature logo. Kind of kind of fits the whole skeleton theme. I'm a little too young to be on a Mount Rushmore, though. I feel like I got to do a little bit more, but I appreciate that.
Well, that's Hobson recommending you. I mean, you can't go any higher than that.
He's the voice of reason. I mean, I can't argue with that.
He's the voice of class, reason, and knowledge down there. So no, thanks. So John, we got through. We're 3-4 going forward, mainly this Sunday, which is a big one. What is still concerning you the most about our beloved team?
This offense is kind of in a rut in the last 2 weeks, and obviously Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator for the Giants, he coordinated the Titans last year. That was kind of a crap show in week 4 of last season. And then obviously Jim Schwartz still has his boys up in Cleveland playing well and matching up well with the things that the Bengals like to do. And obviously not the greatest matchup for this offense, but there's a couple things stand out. This run game is pretty much toast aside from Chase Brown. They're not getting anything above expectation from Zach Moss right now, and it looks night and day when he's carrying the ball compared to Chase Brown, who's getting a lot more, over expectation. He's gaining yards after contact. He's creating explosive runs. He's doing more than just the blocking in front of him. It's kind of a lot of the same things that we've been saying about the run game for quite some time now, just with a different, lead back in there with Zach Moss. Still really solid in pass protection, but they need to diversify some things in the ground game. They're trying to do a lot of the things that they did early in the season. Defenses are catching up to it. They're being more aggressive with it. So, every time that you try to throw a jab there and the defense doesn't expect it, they go back, they regroup, they catch tendencies on film. You got to come up with a new jab. You got to come up with a new strike there, and that needs to happen sooner rather than later, because right now the offense is just Burrow dropping back to Chase and Higgins, and obviously it's a luxury that not every team can afford to have with those two receivers out there. But other than that, there's just not much to go off of right now. You don't have a reliable third option in the passing game. Gesicki's been kind of reduced to this tight end 3 role, and he's not really as trusted as I think a lot of us expected he would be in the passing game. You're not getting a lot out of Yoshivas outside of these scramble drills, outside of the red zone. You would have liked to see a more reliable option in the slot when he isn't there. You don't want just a slot only receiver like Tyler Boyd was at the end of his career, but you do want to see some reliability there, and that's where I think a lot of people hoped that Jermaine Burton would be at this point in the season, but that clearly isn't his time yet. You want to see a little bit more out of Eric Gall as a receiver, so there's still a lot more that this offense can do, and obviously we've seen how it can look in the first month of the season when the defense was not living up to its part. But yeah, I think right now it's just them trying to figure out what the next step is, because they had a great initial plan out of the gate, and defense is just catching up to it now.
Getting healthy on the defensive line, John, has come about in the last couple of weeks. Getting Sheldon back, getting DJ Hill back, getting Miles Murphy back. Another big running back rolls into Paycor on Sunday, and Saquon Barkley. You look back at the Baltimore game, with the exception of that overtime run, we've held Chris Henry in check. We did that, or not Chris Henry, God rest his soul, Derrick Henry in check. We seem to do that probably 9 out of 10 times in Nashville, where we held Derrick Henry in check. Do you think that's something we can do with Saquon on Sunday? Or is he a different type of back that's going to give us more fits?
Yeah, Saquon's interesting because in like 6 games, I think 3 of them have gone over 100 yards, and the other 3, it's been kind of different types of games where he's not been as productive. I thought what's interesting is that 47% of his rushing yards this season have come on runs of 15 yards or more. So they're getting a lot of explosive plays out of him. And I think, as the Bengals kind of have shown with Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb, you can bottle up, running backs against this defense. I think Lou does a good job of that, and kind of swallowing and just condensing the formate and the line of scrimmage a little bit. So when you're not able to get those explosive runs, I think it's hard. It's harder than people think to move the ball with the run game against this defense. Obviously, once you get to the second and third level, tackling becomes an issue. You still have bad angles being taken by the secondary when it gets to that point. But, I think the Browns tried to just run the ball with Nick Chubb down the Bengals' throat. And now that you have a stable rotation of defensive tackles, and you have linebackers who are trusting the defensive tackles a bit more, it's harder to just, pound the A-gap time and time again. But with the Eagles, obviously, very athletic interior offensive line. Mekhi Becton is playing right guard for them, and obviously he came in for a visit. He's 6'8", 360 pounds, and he's fitting pretty well there. Cam Jurgens is the center now, is no longer Jason Kelsey, but he's a more powerful version of Jason Kelsey, I would say. And left guard is escaping me at the moment, but still, it's a very solid interior offensive line for the Eagles up front. And, I think Saquon's been a really good fit for them, and Jalen Hurts kind of, running option plays out of the backfield. But no, if you can limit the explosive plays for Saquon Barkley, I think it can be an okay day for the Bengals run defense, I would say.
Well, All that being said, though, flipping it back to the offense, and you mentioned certain matchup problems, and I think I didn't really realize it till the game, but really the Bengals offense didn't match up all that well with the Giants defense. It was a matchup problem. The Giants should have given us problems. Cleveland goes without saying, although hopefully now we've got a little light at the end of the tunnel. And by the way, if you're listening, NFC teams, please keep those Myles Garrett trade proposals rolling in. Maybe one of you will get lucky. But for the Eagles, as Joe Burrow has control of the ball and control of the offense, what's going to give him problems Sunday other than not knowing who his left tackle is?
Yeah, so we just went through defensive coordinators, right? Shane Bowen, Jim Schwartz. Now you have Vic Fangio, who was with Miami for a couple of years. That was clearly not a good fit. There was a lot of contention, I think, with him coordinating the defense, but I think he's found a much better fit with Philadelphia. The last time the Bengals went up against Vic Fangio was a couple years ago when he was with the Broncos, and it was not a very good offensive day for the Bengals, and that one was a really ugly, low-scoring game. I think it came down to like Khalid Kareem recovering a fumble on a crazy play or something like that, but it was a very important game, very important win for the Bengals that year, and I think that's kind of how they view the last couple of weeks, where you just have to just grind out these ugly wins and do just enough as your defense kind of finds itself, and maybe that's almost the same kind of energy coming into this game because Fangio is still one of the best defensive minds in the game, and he's got cornerbacks that can really play his scheme well. Like Quinyon Mitchell is a rookie out of Toledo. He fell inexplicably in the draft all the way to like the 23rd pick, and I think has like 6 passes breakups and hasn't allowed a touchdown, like a passer rating of 79 or something like that. His coverage and man coverage has been phenomenal. So he's off to a great start as a rookie, and he's going to go up against Jamar Chase. And I think that's going to be a phenomenal matchup, just like Jamar Chase versus Denzel Ward is 2 times a year. I think you're going to see a very similar approach for how the Eagles defend Jamar Chase as how the Browns have done so. So obviously with this offense kind of going through T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, now you have a defense that's led by obviously a great defensive mind with the cornerbacks and the personnel to go man coverage all across the board. I think that's what's going to give the Bengals some problems initially, and it's just a matter of how they adjust as the game goes on.
Going back to defensive side of the ball, John, Bengals side with Lou, obviously 2 A receivers in Brown, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith maybe a little bit underperforming this year. Do you see expect a lot more zone from Lou against them, or what do you think on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, AJ Brown is just dangerous, man. Like he was out for a few weeks, and I think the offense greatly suffered because of it. And I think that put more pressure on Devontae Smith to do a little bit more. And I think he definitely fits as like that 1B option there. It's really hard to guard both those guys in man coverage, though, and I don't really think that you can rely on, like, Cam Taylor, obviously very talented, but I don't think you want to put that pressure on him for the entire game. So whether or not Geno Stone is healthy enough in this game, like, I think he's kind of coming into his own back there as the free safety. If he's out of this game, like, I think you're looking at a much more conservative approach defensive wise in terms of just dropping back into coverage against these guys, because again, like, both those guys are great separators, and AJ Brown is so strong as a route runner too. Like, he can generate separation with the ball in the air on those deep routes. And Jalen Hurts, not the most accurate quarterback in the game, but he can get the ball out to him. So not obviously when you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, you're going to have an advantage against most defenses. So yeah, I would say that the Bengals are going to try to take it as conservative as possible to make sure that nothing gets over their head.
James and I were talking a little bit about the kicking situation, that it hasn't gone as smooth, and certainly with the Baltimore game, a bit tragic at times. You see Saturday now, there were 3 kicks missed on that turf on Sunday, rather. Do you think there's an issue with the flow of the snap to the hold to the kick? Is Evan just not having as good a year, or we're fine, everybody needs to calm down?
Yeah, like I think it was good, Barry, you kind of brought this up earlier this week. Like, a lot of McPherson's misses have, for whatever reason, come early in the season. Maybe it's just a reflection of the entire team and how they kind of go through the ebbs and flows of the season. It is weird how, as the air gets colder and just the field gets colder, like, he starts to become a little bit more accurate. But yeah, like, I think obviously, like, Rico's hold in the snap against the Ravens was the obvious cause for that miss, and it did seem to be a little bit windy up in Cleveland, which is why Dustin Hopkins didn't have the best day either. So like these misses are pretty natural and pretty normal now for Evan McPherson. He's very rarely, I think, going to have a season where he goes over 90% of his kicks made, and it's about just seeing if the same type of pattern kind of continues this season as it's done in years past. And obviously, the more reps that he gets with Rico and Adamitis and that snap and hold operation, I think the more smoothly it'll go. But it is a good point because he hasn't really had the same holder for 2 years in a row now for a couple years, so maybe that is something to kind of monitor.
You heard it there, Bengals fans. Don't panic. John says we'll be okay. Evan just heats up as the weather gets colder. Before you came on, John, Tom and I were going back and forth with the Geno Stone injury. Fans even before that clamoring for more Jordan Battle in the secondary. Do you think he's the initial plug and play with Deshaun Anthony being the gentleman behind him? Do we see a totally different combination? Tyson Anderson gets some snaps. What do you see out of the safety position with Geno Stone potentially on the sideline?
It's a good question. I feel like the in-game replacement, obviously last game was Jordan Battle just because they were trying to get him more snaps as the game kind of went on, which is the same case as last week. And it was more of getting Von Bell off the field and because they're very similar as athletes and very similar in terms of playing closer to the line of scrimmage. Now with Geno Stone, you don't want him close to the line of scrimmage. That's not where he excels. So I think the best option, honestly, is either looking at Deshaun Anthony or Tyson Anderson in that role, just because they're better athletes, and you want guys who can cover more ground and play in more comfortable in those deep zones. And I think with Jordan Battle, he's a very well-rounded safety, but he's not a great athlete. That if he was, he would have been drafted a little bit earlier than he was. So the closer that you have him to the line of scrimmage where he can kind of play downhill, get into those run fits, very solid tackler, one of the best tacklers I think that they have in the secondary, at least when he's on the field. So I don't know if Geno Stone's injury is the path to get Jordan Battle on the field more. I think that it's still going to be some type of a rotation with Von Bell and trying to see if that role can maybe transfer to Jordan Battle as the season goes on. So if Geno Stone does miss this game, I'm really interested to see if either Tyson Anderson or Deshaun Anthony get on the field a little bit more.
Okay, fair enough. So another thing we talked about before you came on, and this goes back to history a little bit, and this is a pet peeve and a big cause of us on this show. Ken Anderson has made it to the final. It's supposed to be around the 25. It's actually 31 guys before they pare it down to 9. And from that 9, select the 3 that can go into the Hall of Fame this year between coaches, contributors, and senior players. You talk to some of these guys just like we do. Do you have any thoughts? Could this finally be the year we see some justice and Ken gets his just due?
It's a tough subject because, as more years go on and other guys go in, then his argument only strengthens, right? Because the fact that he's still available compared to other guys who are still available and everyone else who's gotten in, it just kind of increases his chances. So that's kind of how I've always felt about the situation. Obviously, if it were up to me, he would already be in, and maybe not as a senior member like he would have been in a while ago, just because, again, like, Hall of Fame, it's got fame in the name. Ken Anderson's not the most famous quarterback who played in that era, but he was legitimately one of the best. And that should just be what the Hall of Fame does represent, like the best of your time. And it's been long past due that Ken Anderson gets the credit of being one of the pioneers of accuracy at the quarterback position, of efficiency, of just consistency for a decade plus. And the fact that he did it at an MVP level at that point and put up numbers that for that time was very much unseen, and how still, like, even if he didn't win the Super Bowl, he wasn't a superstar in that sense, like a Joe Namath was, but the fact that he, commanded an offense that eventually went on to become a lot more famous on the West Coast with the 49ers, like that should mean something in the lore of football. And that's why guys like him deserve some type of a spot in Canton, whether as a senior member or, rightfully as, a modern era member. But obviously that time is well past. So hopefully this is the year, because you don't want this to keep lingering on.
Switching gears back to the defensive side of ball, we sang the praises of Trey Hendrickson, another big game in Cleveland on Saturday, multi-sack game. Is there any hope on the roster to find that complement? Can Miles Murphy, will we see Osai suddenly have a career game, or is this something Trey's just going to be the one-man show, rushing from the edge? We'll get Sam helping in the run game, and that complementary defensive end to Trey is something we're going to have to look for in the offseason.
Most likely the latter, just because, again, like, I think with Osai, like, the hope with him was his athleticism of bending around the edge, like that was kind of the hope with him. And obviously his development has been stunted quite many a time via injuries. And Miles Murphy is again, like he's really fast, really explosive, but doesn't have a lot of bend. So if those guys can't figure out a way to kind of win with their hands as a processor, as a pass rusher, which is how Trey Hendrickson is able to succeed, then it's a lot tougher for those guys to gain penetration like Trey does on a consistent basis. So the hope, I think, if you want more production out of your edges, you continue to let Sheldon Rankins kind of get into his form and create some disruption up the middle, because that creates opportunities on the edge for guys like Hendrickson, for guys like Murphy and Osai, obviously. And I think Osai showed some flashes against the Browns offensive line. Granted, not the best offensive line, not what it used to be, but the more that you guys, the more that they have all four of those guys kind of healthy in that rotation, I think it just makes everyone better. We just talked to Sam Hubbard earlier today, and I asked him about like how is his process evolving as a veteran? Is he trying new ways to kind of maintain that production, or is he just kind of honing his craft? And his biggest thing that he pointed to was just the fact that making sure that you're as efficient as possible with the reps that you get, and how it's a good thing at this point in his career where he's not playing 70-80% of the snaps. If he's down in that 60% range where he can be fresh as the game goes on, and he can utilize the things that he does well, and obviously he's a really experienced guy and he's learned a couple of things. So if Murphy and Osai can get to that point, that would be great. But yeah, the more that you have the ability to rotate those guys in and out of the game and give them in the prime opportunities on obvious passing situations, that's when you can start to see that production uptick, obviously alongside with a lot more disruption up the middle of Sheldon Rankins.
Have you been happy with the whenever the team's not going well, the offense isn't going well right away? It's the play calling. Have you been happy with the rhythm of the play calling for the most part?
It's very give and take. I feel like the main things that I've seen are, for whatever reason, Burrow's just not getting the ball out quick enough, and I don't know if it's a lack of trust with some of these guys who aren't named Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or if he's getting a little bit happy feet in the pocket. I think when Burrow is operating at the level that everyone's accustomed to, the play calling typically shines a little bit better. And there are always obvious examples of very questionable route concepts, and again, I think that they fall in love with some type of run schemes that just don't end up working as much. But every fan base can have its own specific complaints about their play callers. I feel like the only two play callers who are immune to any criticism are Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and they're obviously two of the best in the league. So if you don't have those two guys, there's always going to be complaints about the effectiveness of your play calling. But again, I think when Burrow is again on time and in rhythm, like I think the play calling shines a little bit more. It's just about maximizing the personnel that you have, and I think right now they're running into some issues with trying to how to maximize some of these guys who aren't bona fide superstars.
John, we want to be conscious every time. We appreciate you joining us. If we had to look ahead to Sunday, I believe is the line 3-6. I don't even remember what
2.5.
It's down to 2.5. Okay, 2.5 on Sunday. In your crystal ball, what can we expect Sunday at Paycor Stadium?
Man, I know for a fact that the Eagles offense is going to be better than both the Giants and the Browns combined. And that's a great test for how this new look defensive line, it's just healthy, right? It's just what everyone expected it to be at the beginning of the season. So that's a great test to see, how effective this defensive line is and how it can kind of carry the defense like it has for the past 2 weeks. But I still question whether or not this offense has found new answers of how to kind of regain that form that they had in the first month. And the Eagles, again, have really solid man cover cornerbacks, and they have a really athletic pass rushing unit. Two things that just like the Giants and the Browns have that have given the Bengals offense a little bit of fits. So if this offense still can't find a way to consistently run the ball, not just in terms of volume, but in terms of effectiveness, and in terms of maybe some calls not getting called back by some questionable holding calls, that would definitely help as well. So until they find a way to get some of the answers in the run game, and if Burrow is just aggressive out of the gate and he's not taking 2 full quarters to get the ball out within 3 seconds, then yeah, I would expect the Bengals to probably win this game. But until I see that, I think the Eagles might have the slight upper hand in this one, just because, again, better offense and a defense that's capable of stopping what the Bengals like to do best. So I'm going to say right now, as it stands, the Eagles win a 1-score game, but the Bengals offense has surprised me before with counters and answers that I haven't seen, and they can do it again this week as well.
Tom, go ahead and end us with our final question here for John.
Well, he pretty much just answered it with his prediction for Sunday. But is Sunday the must win? I mean, do things begin to fall apart if they don't win Sunday? Okay. I mean, you do have the Raiders the following week, a very winnable game. But then we're back on the road against Baltimore, second year in a row on a Thursday night in Baltimore. I'd like to thank the schedule makers for doing that to us 2 years in a row. But, do they have to get to – I mean, we haven't won at home yet. It's going to be Halloween.
Right.
If we don't win Sunday, they're not going to have a win at home by Halloween. Do they have to win this one Sunday if we're to fight for a wild card?
I would say like the absolute must win right now in the near future is that Baltimore game, because I feel like if you're 1-1 of the next 2 weeks, and I feel like everyone's going to expect them to beat the Raiders, and they honestly should beat the Raiders with their eyes closed. But if they can get to, that would put them at 4-5 entering Baltimore. You got to continue to stack wins in your division. Like beating the Browns is the obvious first step, but that's just one win in the conference, is one win in the division. Getting swept by Baltimore is pretty much grounds for they're going to finish behind them in the standings, and they still have a lot of ground to catch up with Pittsburgh. And it's not a given that 3 teams in this division are going to make the playoffs. So if they lose the Eagles, definitely not over. Like they're 3-5. They were 3-5 back in 2012. They're 3-5 back in 3-5 back in 2012, and they went on a little late season run, and that's typically when this team starts this run as well. But I think you beat the Raiders no matter what happens this week, and then you really hone in on that Ravens game, because they got to get back.
John, we appreciate you joining us. For those tuning in and want to see your other work, where can Bengals fans find you?
Yeah, it's just writing articles and doing videos for AtoZSports.com/Cincinnati, and you can catch me here on this lovely Believe Podcast Network, Believe in Cincy, with Anthony Cosenza, the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. We do a couple shows a week, so check me out there.
We appreciate it, John. Hopefully we'll get that W Sunday at Paycor. And again, it's Jeff Hobson says you are climbing your way to the top of Mount Rushmore, right, Tom?
Absolutely. And if Jeff Hobson says it's gold, so, pin that to everything you send out, and have everybody introduce you like that. Jeff Hobson says you're the man.
I might have to start doing that. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Appreciate it, John. Have a good
day.
Uday. Oops. Kicked you off the stage. Last time I did that was to Jamie, Tom.
That was a transgression. So
well, we appreciate John. We appreciate his feedback. And, to look at Sunday, it's a winnable game, 100%. Maybe, that offense surprises us. I think, what do you say? Minimum 24 points if we're going to win the game on Sunday, Tom?
Absolutely. I would say they're going to need 27, minimum of 27 to win.
All righty. Before we wrap up, obviously, it is the whiteout game Sunday. I do have a graphic for Craig, so he knows to wear the white jersey on Sunday. Also, poor John Stanger, who sits in front of me. Jamie has been known to spill some ketchup and chicken wing sauce on John's white articles of clothing during these games. So we might put like a reverse apron on John just to protect him from Jamie.
Well, I don't think you need to protect him for Jamie, but you brought him up and you had kind of alluded to it earlier. Will he have a table, or will people just be coming up for selfies? Or when he arrives at the tailgates, he is signing, was my understanding, for his adoring, demanding public.
Well, usually what happens, the music stops, the crowd clears, and then he walks in. I think he might even, for a Halloween game, he might set up a kissing booth with the proceeds going to charity. So, how many women can say they've kissed a Canadian? So, again, as everything we do, it all goes to charity. So that might be a surprise at the tailgate on Sunday. Another, not a surprise. I think it's well known they are headed over. Our friends from the UK, Paul and his friends, I believe, has a group of 20 plus Brits making their way over for the game. So we look forward to seeing them at the tailgate. And what else am I missing about Sunday, Tom?
Win. Wear white and win. There were rumors about Halloween costumes. Well, if you're going to wear white, be a white abominable snowman with some black stripes on your shoulder. Just wear white. The NFL kind of messed us out of a nice nighttime setting with those white jerseys. But but that's fine. We'll work with what we have. The main thing is just to beat the Eagles. So wear white, be loud, and let's help the guys get the W.
Well, as always, we appreciate the fans tuning in. Look forward to seeing everyone Sunday. Tom, any final thoughts?
See you all Sunday. Be loud.
All right. Hoo day, everybody. Have a great evening.
Hoo day.